Would you have liked to live in those kind of times?
With China,
Yeah, I'm just saying it doesn't have to be China. It could be Europe or
Europe. Like, would I want to be Europe?
no. Would you have wanted to live in those kind of times, like the 1400s? You know, no cars. There was just ships and.
I mean, okay, if you're gonna ask me now, obviously, since I've grown up in like a technologically advanced country, obviously no. But if I were to be born in that time, I wouldn't really know any different, you know. And I mean, if I
Kind
could
of
go
the
back
Matrix
and not be
syndrome.
stuck back there, I think it'd be pretty interesting. Maybe I could change the course of history and
I guess back then
make the West
it
not
would
so
be.
green.
It's so what was probably be exciting back then because there was so many discoveries all the time. You know, oh,
Yeah.
a new country. You know, now it's kind of yeah, of course. Okay, let's go. Should we start?
Yeah,
Okay, start.
it's been starting for.
Oh, really? Okay, Alexis. What?
So I'm gonna put what you just asked in.
Okay. For Chinese history, what would you like to discuss?
I would like to discuss China's age of exploration.
Okay. So tell me about it. What is like? When did it happen? And why is it interesting?
Well, it started in the Ming Dynasty with Zhang He's 7 fleet voyages in like 1405 to like the 1430s, and basically their main like priority was to they basically or the who okay whatever their main intention for going on these voyages was to just sort of experience the different cultures, like be like be introduced to new ideas, new like to trade with the tribute system and stuff. Like which is why I thought this was interesting because so 90 years later, the West comes in, and it's interesting how like two different cultures from two very different parts of the world who get put into the same area basically, like the Indian Ocean, who interacted with these at the time foreign lands and people.
So the Chinese explored first, or the Europeans?
China actually did.
Well, weren't the Europeans such a big, strong?
Don't act dumb.
No, just saying.
No, don't act like you're a second grader. I'm actually gonna put this in. It's so funny. Yeah, you're acting like a second grader.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think it's interesting because but I actually thought that no, he wants us to be really like natural. No, really, I'm not gonna like edit any of this out. Anyways, okay. I thought it was interesting because like we all know this thing like Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, right? So it's kind of because like I don't know, maybe this is thing, but I thought. I've never learned through all my years in history, like taking AP histories even. I don't know if it's considered to be common knowledge, but I've never learned that China actually, had experience like in sailing before the West did. You always think of the West as being like the first to do everything, but actually, in taking this class, I learned that China actually, like at this time, the early 1400s, China's military technology and especially their naval power far surpassed any of the Western powers, which I thought was really interesting. Because no U.S. history class or world history class would ever say something like that.
Okay, let's talk about the voyages. So they had how big are the voyages? How many?
They had Zhang He's fleet was like 300 vessels, over 300, and it had like 20,000 men. And very few of them, which was part of their motives, very few of the vessels had any like military capability, and the ones that did have it were simply for like the show, like
so
to make them.
Why did they do it?
They just did it so they could trade. We were reading in one of these packets about how they. Even like they brought home some animals, they brought different foods so they could introduce. It's sort of like connecting the world. It kind of was like the beginning of globalization and trade. Like China was now introduced to like new ideas, new religions, new objects, and then their countries that they traded with were also benefited. And they were peaceful, they were kind, they were
But didn't Europeans also make a huge impact because didn't they, wasn't it very profitable? I thought Europe was kind of built by trade as well and.
That's why it's interesting because although they both traded, when the West came in, I know you know this, but anyways, when the West came in, they were profit motive. Like the king.
China must be profit motive too. Like even this tribute system, they're still trying. If someone's going to give you a tribute worth less than what you gave them, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. I mean, obviously there was some, but I think the dominant issue is more to be introduced to new country, to new cultures and ideas, whatever. But with the West, obviously the dominant issue was for money. Like the king at the time sent the voyages out to find gold to make profits, and the Pope at the time actually even commended these people. And basically, if any of them died, he would like forgive their sins and make sure they go to heaven. And he called this thing a holy a voyage, where in reality they, I guess what's different is the West, when they went in, they were, conquering lands, colonizing lands, exploiting resources.
But since they, when did China stop?
1430s.
Okay, so they won.
I think it was because they just couldn't afford it anymore. They were building. I think they had a lot of public work.
Big, huh?
Yeah, they wanted to develop it too.
If I think about it, and you say, well, one is a little more violent than the other, and one colonizes.
It's not just violence, though. It's just sort of like their ideas. Like, no, wait, let me just say something. China, like, this is going way back in their history. Their social class, like the West, it's always like the elites are like the bankers, the lawyers, the people who make a lot of money. The bottoms are like the people who are lazy and don't make a lot of money or don't work, right? If not excluding housewives, anyways. But in China, it was like the elite were like the scholars, which I guess is sort of like draws parallels to the West because the scholars are like intelligent, right? And the West does value intelligence. But anyways, the top was the scholars, and then the bottom were actually like the merchants, like bankers like you. So what do you feel about that?
Scholars?
Yeah, what do you feel like? The peasants were actually even above the merchants according to China's social classes back then. What do you feel?
Money couldn't build any more ships. No, but listen, I guess my point is this: that if you seem to be much more positive with the Chinese,
I feel like I want to say this. I feel like this course sort of like opened my eyes because like talking with you a lot, you don't make China look bad, but you favor the West, right?
No, it's called empathy. You need to understand both. You shouldn't be too biased in one direction.
Yeah, no, I'm not biased. I don't think I'm biased. But I'm just saying, taking this course like opened my eyes to more like of the Western flaw, looking at it in China's eyes,
All right, but let me ask, like, if you really want to see who had more impact in exploration, China did it first, then Europe did it, but Europe seems to...
obviously.
But Europe, it was more sustainable because they made money and they conquered, and they had more impact on the lands that they
obviously Europe made more impact, but whether it was negative or positive, that's like debatable. Obviously, in the long run, in your view, it worked out.
I guess what I'm saying is, who really brought the world closer together? Was it more China or was it more Europe? Because Europe kind of maybe forced it.
Obviously, because if China did, we'd be hearing about them today, right? We don't. So obviously Europe did that, but I feel like their means of getting there were, not.
So you think
China's work.
If you do research, you think
but I think we should talk about like what does this say about their culture?
Well, that's what I mean. I'm getting to that. So you think that because a lot of their culture, what it says about their culture would be what their motivation is to explore. So if you think that their motivation was exploration and trade and very nonviolence, then I think it's a good way to explore. It's much better than conquering, right? Yeah.
Because that way, like, I'm gonna forget, okay? But like today, like we can't really go back in time and think what would have happened. But maybe if the Chinese did continue that and the West never did, or China had a joint influence, like our world would be a very different place. And maybe those countries that got conquered and got so much Western influence will, change our world today and have everyone would have a different expectation.
They would just be fighting their own wars instead.
No, but like for example, like China, there's not a lot of like. I mean, it's growing, but the amount of Western influence in comparison to the Eastern influence, the Western influence is definitely dominant, right? If the East never did actually pull out of this because of whatever their internal improvements, they couldn't afford it anymore, then I think our world would be very different. And I think those countries that got conquered or whatever would have, more. Maybe they have something to offer.
But is it a good system if it's not sustainable? I guess anything in the world, right? They did this for 30 years and then they were history, right, as far as exploration. So is it, just because they had great motives and they were very noble motives, if that's really the case, I haven't really researched it, but If it's not sustainable and only lasts for 30 years, when these European explorers are doing it for hundreds of years, ultimately, isn't it flawed?
But what was flawed about it? They had no goal. Their goal wasn't to make money, have this go on forever. I think that they just wanted to like be exposed to different cultures and different ideas. So
But there were probably still a lot more cultures and ideas to expose to. Why stop them?
Because they couldn't afford it.
But I know that's the point I'm trying to make. Like I think maybe the tribute system was not.
No, if they did have enough money and they went to all the cultures, that would have been good, right? But whatever they did, it was better than the way. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if you like how our world is right now, then I guess for you it's a good thing. Whatever happened, like the ends justify the means. Like whatever happened.
Might have been very well in a socialist, communist dominated world. Although China is not very communist these days.
No, I forgot what I was saying.
Not economic.
No, but okay, whatever. This is kind of off topic, but we were watching a video in class, and it was about like a really rich man in China, like a billionaire in China, and he's like a capitalist, but he says China is capitalist, but it doesn't practice capitalism or something, because he says like I forgot, but I'll show you the video. It's interesting if you want to watch it. It's like an hour.
No, I think that the economy is turning extremely.
They have different ideas about capitalism. No,
I disagree.
In general,
I think because I do business in China, so I think China is extremely capitalist from a business perspective and turning more capitalist all the time. From a governmental perspective, it's more authoritarian.
Yeah. Anyways, we're not. This isn't
okay,
what this is about. But anyways, I'm going to show you that video. Okay. It's an hour.
Okay. Anyway, let's talk more about this exploration. Yeah. But so you think that?
No. Anyways, about the whole sustainability thing. But do you think that what they did is worse than what the West did? As in, like the West went and conquered everyone and.
Like I don't. Think,
so what? Okay, the West was sustainable.
I don't think it's right that America used manifest destiny to conquer all the Indians and wipe them out.
Yeah.
And all these other things, but that's what's created nations, right? There's a lot of blood in history.
Yeah, but
so I'm not saying morally it's correct, but without maybe without some of some countries getting large, then there'll be a lot of small, tiny countries, and
no, but you can still have large countries that behave peacefully with others.
No, but I think that
obviously, for countries to get large, something.
But also, like if a country has medicine and wealth, like Roman Empire, when they expanded that, in Europe, it had a lot of benefits on those countries as well, if they were part of that.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Everything that's happened, I think, is good for the most part. But I'm just saying, we don't know what would happen if China kept going and the West didn't, Like, our world might have been better today. You don't know.
Yeah, I think I haven't done research on it. I'll take you if their motivation really was let's explore and build relationships with different cultures.
Yeah, like people can form big countries could still form just by having like peaceful relationships with people and having like treaties.
But but it says here that while they were doing that, he was busy. This emperor, while he was doing his tribute system and sending these things, he was busy conquering Vietnam and Mongolia. So I don't think that these guys were completely pacifist. Okay.
Better than the West. So, like, if we talk about, let's talk about the religious values of the West, right? So they're predominantly Christian, right? And even though Christianity teaches you to be so, nice to everyone and, don't, follow the 10 Commandments or, I don't really know, be a good person, basically, right? It's just...
Don't follow the 10 Commandments?
I said follow. Okay, follow the 10 Commandments. But it's funny because, I'll find out his name. It was, Pope Martin V basically offered Da Gama general confession and granted him absolute forgiveness of sins to any members of the fleet who would lose their lives in this holy venture. So he called this exploration a holy venture.
There's two things.
So it's kind of contradictory to what Christianity really stands for.
But there's two things. I understand. I think in Europe, religion was quite important, and it was what paid for a lot of the voyages and paid for a lot of.
Whereas if we talk about China's religion, they don't really have a religion. They're more like Confucius in the beginning, then Taoists, and Confucius returns, right? And basically, just in China's history, like I think in the West, like religiously and philosophically, money is always, looked up upon. Like whether it's the churches asking for money so that they could, grow their church empire and buy more golden thrones or whatever, or it's just, these makings of like humongous like, what is like these huge churches that they spend a bunch of money on, right? Whatever. It's still like motive. Their motive is still wealth. I'm not. No, I'm not going to sort of say like the religious people just want to get rich, but I'm just saying like these churches are profitable businesses, right? Are they not profitable?
I think the Vatican is profitable, but a lot of churches go out of business.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, yeah.
No,
I'm talking
like,
about the big churches.
It depends. There's swindle. There are people that are very religious that are doing, that are doing what they think is right.
No, I know. Obviously, I'm not saying everyone is, but I'm just saying, just like the wealth, looking at their religion and their philosophy on life, it's just money. Like, not just money, but that's a big part of it. Like, even the way I've grown up to want a lot of money. Also, it's just like in China, money was never looked at as the most important thing. I'm not saying like the most important thing. Yeah. So I think that's really what really created this imbalance.
So basically, what you're saying is those cultures and that kind of way of life is what, even when they're sailing to India and Sri Lanka, they're still governed by those traits, which are very
like when you grow up with
harmless.
When you grow up with that, I think it sort of sticks with you. And also,
I think we're done. I think we got it nailed. I think it's cool. I think you convinced me. I think that if more countries, in history explored and had voyages like the Chinese, there'd be probably less colonies, a lot less killing.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if we look at our world today, I would say, besides like the suffering, not that it's a small issue, but I could say it's pretty good. Like, but I mean, I guess not everyone looks at a technologically advanced world as a good one, I do.
Everything good, you give up something else. So it's less personal.
But I'm just saying, like, there are means of getting there if we just like focus on this little period of time. It's I don't know. I feel like the Chinese were a lot more like honorable about it. Like they still managed to, become knowledgeable about these different places, right, and form relationships with these people. And if you think about it, I mean, I know, okay, fine, yeah, form relationships with these people and stuff. Whereas the West obviously colonized stuff, and I think it's interesting because so much of their past, like, really, this just sort of like shows it because, the East, if we look at their values, like their traditional values, it makes sense to see what they did, why they did that, and then same with the West, right? Like, I would not expect anything else from the West to go and, like, colonize and exploit their natural resources. Like, we do it today. Like, with oil, we do it. Like, you can defend it all you want, but, like, motives in war are oil, right?
It's not just oil.
What I know, but Kuwait, like...
No, Kuwait, actually, that was about... protecting an ally. The second
because the ally has so much oil.
No, but still, that's kind of like you cannot let. There's a lot of different things. It's much more complicated. But the last Iraq War, I guess that was.
So I think there are even today, I think there are strong parallels between these two countries and how they act.
Yeah, I agree.
As global neighbors.
I think China. There's a lot of things you can criticize internally about the country, if you choose to look at all the facts. However, they've never really been an expansionist country. They're using more of their economic.
If everyone didn't colonize, this world would be very different. If some people did and some people didn't, they'll become the powerful, you'll become the powerless. So it's kind of like you don't really know how it would work out. Yeah.
Things to think about. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good conversation. 30 minutes.